All right, let's get into the difference between dynamic and condenser microphones.
Okay. So dynamics are your most common microphones, SM58s, SM57s, Audix OM5, OM3, OM7. Everybody knows that dynamics are more affordable. How affordable do you want your church to go? I would say a good dynamic mic is going to cost you about $80 and up. The not so good ones are going to be $5 for $80, and they'll throw in one for free. Don't buy those, because this is the first link in your chain is the microphone. So get the best mic that you can afford, because it'll sound better and it'll last longer. All right. So dynamic mics are basically the same exact thing as a loudspeaker in reverse. You got a diaphragm. You got a coil of wire that goes over a magnet, and as the acoustic vibrations push the diaphragm, the coil moves. It's called a moving coil, and it creates current, electricity. It's a small amount of current, or millivolts. Microphones are small little levels, so when it comes into the mixer, it's got to come up to line level. You talk about this in setting gain. That's what the mic preamp does. The problem with dynamic mics is they don't do very well with distant miking. So if you're trying to use SM58s for your choir, please stop. All you're doing is creating feedback. If you're trying to use it for something high frequency, they don't go up that high. And if you're using dynamic mics for kick drum, they make specialized dynamic mics for low frequency. So those are good. And you can use it on a flute if you want to, but if you look at the frequency curve, it's probably not going to do that much for the flute frequencies. They're affordable, they're reliable. You can use them on just about anything except distant miking. I wouldn't use them for overheads, choirs, ensembles, anything like that, but I would use them for snare drums, for kick drums, for guitar cabinets, for vocals. Why would I use a dynamic vocal mic instead of a condenser? For the reasons I said before. Condensers are way more sensitive, so they'll pick up more area. That's where you have to start looking at patterns. Condensers are different. Condenser, another name for condenser is a capacitor. A capacitor is something that stores a charge. So you have a conductive diaphragm, and you have a permanently charged backplate. So when vibrations hit that, the thing isn't really moving like a moving coil. It's changing the capacitance between the backplate and the front diaphragm. And that produces electricity. You just about breathe on a condenser and you've got sound. And these are ideal for things that need extended frequency response, more sensitivity, acoustic instruments, overheads, choirs, ensemble, area recording, ambient microphones. And in the studio, vocals, on a stage too for vocals, but you can't stand in front of the drum set because it's too sensitive. So you got to make sure that where you're using it, you're not going to pick up a lot of adjacent sound from it because of their sensitivity. Ribbons are used a lot now too on stage, but by nature, ribbons are bidirectional to pick up front and back. It's a figure eight pattern most of the time. So if you're miking a guitar cabinet, you might want to baffle the back of it. But once you've listened to a ribbon on a guitar cabinet, you're probably not going to go back to too many dynamics or condensers. They just reveal harmonics that the other guys don't. They're really natural sounding.
That's interesting. I've actually not heard that about ribbon mics, and now I want to try one. Is there any other uses for ribbon mics other than mic and guitar cabinet?
You can use them on vocals. There's a guy named Scotty Murray who used to play with Brenton Brown for a long time. He's a big Nashville session guy. I sent him a couple of ribbons years ago. He uses them on pianos, cellos, vocals, everything. But his guitar cabinets, he's like wowed. You could put a condenser on a Marshall, Marshall cab, play them. They have their distinct, unique sounds, like an SM57 or a Neumann, or combinations of that. And they'll put a ribbon on and you'll go, holy Christmas, what is that? Because they just work differently. It's like a piece of corrugated aluminum. Nowadays, they use different materials, but it's in a U-shaped magnet. And the sound comes in front and back. And it just produces this very natural sound. Almost like a human ear in some ways. You want to try some. And Audix just came out with some, but I'm waiting for them to send me some so I can play with them. But Royer makes a good one. AT makes some nice ones. don't forget about condensers too. They require phantom power. And that's on your console. It'll either be global and turn phantom power on every channel, like an old powered mixer might have. But most of the current consoles are per channel. So just make sure your channel's muted before you flip it on. If you're doing a sound check and the mic's not working, maybe the worst, we went out and bought a condenser this weekend and you didn't know it. So mute it first, flip the fader up, try it again. If that doesn't, then you have to go through the rigmarole of what the problem is on that channel. But
I can hear a question coming up about that. So we need phantom power with a condenser microphone, but will it hurt my dynamic microphone if I accidentally have phantom power on?
Not unless it's a Radio Shack mic. It bursts into flames if you do that. But they're out of business now, so don't worry about it. No, dynamics are wired differently. So it discharges that charge. It doesn't have anything to do with the operation of the mic.
Mixing sound seems complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Get access to our stress-free training to help you create great sound at church by visiting churchsoundmadesimple.com.